Hello and welcome to the Daily Lawyer Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jenna Krishnan, your host, and this is yet another episode in our Careers in the Law series. And today we have a very interesting episode with a very interesting person whom I was just getting to know a little bit before we started recording. I can't wait to know more about her and her story and how she came to, how did she choose this career, this absolutely global career. So I'm speaking and I'm going to be speaking with Priyadarshini Hariharan. She's a human rights lawyer. She's a lawyer from India, but she's currently based, she's actually joining us from Iran because she works with the UNHCR, which is the UN Refugee Agency, United Nations Refugee Agency. So Priya did her basic law degree from India, from ILS Pune, and then went to the University of Exeter to do her master's in human rights law. And after she completed her master, she's held various positions in public interest legal support and research before she joined the UNHCR full-time in 2013 and has been with them since. So I'm so excited, Priya. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're joining us all the way from Iran. And I'm so grateful that you made the time to come here. So please welcome to the Daily Lawyer Podcast.
Thank you very much. Can I correct you on two small points?
Yeah.
It was University of Essex.
Is
that
it?
I went to. Yeah.
I wrote Exeter. Okay.
And I started with UNHCR in 2011. It's okay. It's a small thing.
Now I will jump right into the conversation. We've been chatting and I think I can keep chatting with you. And I almost forgot to press record. So like I said, I can't wait to hear more about your journey, but because it's so different from what and we are more or less the same age in the sense that our careers in every way, we passed out more or less in the same year and things like that. So at that time, this was never part of my, I didn't even think about it, to be honest. It was not even there in the horizon. So how did you think of this, and take us back to your journey starting from law school, and how did you come here?
So that's an interesting question because I get asked that a lot, especially people who are like around my age group. But for me, actually, this was never I always wanted to do this. Even before so when I was in school, so there's one thing about me which is I don't know, some people are focused from the very beginning. Some people, find their calling later in life. But for me, it was very clear. Even when I was in school, I was very focused. There were two things that I wanted to do. I either wanted to be a doctor or I wanted to be a lawyer. I know they don't connect, they're completely
But
different.
actually, a lot of people have, even me, I had a similar, I did not want to be a lawyer, but definitely I had doctor as an option. But we have somebody else on the podcast who had the exact same options.
So it's
that
common.
you had.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
very
because
uncommon.
people sometimes ask me, doctor and lawyer, what's the connection?
Yeah. They're
So of
both
course, doctor.
professional, they're both professions where your skill, your skill affects your success, your success
Yeah,
is almost entirely
possibly.
based on your skill and your
Skill,
hard work, right? So possibly.
possibly. So with doctor, it was like I was always very interested in biology and I was very good at it. And I think the law thing, it came to me because I used to be a debater in school. So I used to participate in a lot of debates, declamations, etc., and a lot of public speaking. The irony is that I'm petrified of public speaking even today, but I still used to do it then, and I still continue to do. I
So
still
you
have to as
haven't,
part of
like,
my
you
job.
haven't outgrown the fear.
No, I still haven't. It's a joke, and those days the fear used to be even greater. But I used to always still participate because I used to be pushed by my teachers saying, "No, you are eloquent. You should." So I used to, and I actually somehow did well at it, even though I used to be extremely nervous, like the first 5 minutes. But after that, I used to flow into it. So I think that's also what, debating, etc., made me very interested in law. And then, but I always thought it's my second option. While I started appearing for entrance exams, etc., somewhere down the line I realized that I don't think I want to do medicine. And I think law has become my first choice and not medicine anymore, because giving those entrance exams, I just realized that maybe it's just too much for me. It was a long, hard road ahead. And it's just, it's not that I didn't like it. I did. But then I said, no, if I can do law, then I'd prefer to do law. And even when I wanted to be a doctor, it was, I always wanted to join like something like Doctors Without Borders. I never wanted to work in a hospital, like a corporate hospital. That was not my dream. I always wanted to do something like that involved traveling, adventure. So I think that was my calling. So even when I started studying law, I always had this in my mind that I either want to join the foreign services, or I want to work for the United Nations. And I had this peculiar interest in human rights, um, and humanitarian affairs. So of course, working for the foreign service means you are a career diplomat and you represent a country. And of course, few years down the line, I realized it's a good choice, but I don't think that I want to really necessarily represent a country. I want to represent humanitarian principles, human rights principles. That's what I want to work for. So it was very focused from then, and I think it kept shifting here and there, or getting a bit more narrowed in or focused as I went along in law school, like from the first year to the third year. And then by the time I was in my fifth year, it was very clear that I wanted to pursue this. So I wanted to do my masters and get a, because in India, you don't necessarily, I mean, we had this international human rights law as one subject, but it's very basic. It just touches upon, I wanted to dive deeper into it. That's why I went ahead and I did that. And then while I was doing my masters, I chose refugee law as a subject, and I was just blown away. And I really wanted to only work with UNHCR after that. It became I would have, worked in another UN agency. And even now, I think sometimes maybe it's good to have, the other perspective shift a little. I don't mind that. But somehow when I was doing my master's and when I graduated, I had it quite fixed in my head that, UNHCR would be my first choice. I really do want to work for refugees. I don't know if it has something to do with my teenage years, when there was the Afghan crisis, and we had the the Afghan like civil war, and then we had a lot of refugees, Afghan refugees in Delhi, in the area where I was growing up, particularly. So I have gone to school with them. My dentist growing up was an Afghan. And then, I used to play with those, I had friends from the Afghan community. So I don't know, it was very, refugees was kind of stuck in my head.
Yeah, it was
Another thing
it
is that
actually from it seems like it was your, it was almost like designed to take you from
yeah, I
childhood.
guess. And
Yeah.
then I've also grown up listening to stories from my mother, who heard from her grandmother how they traveled from Myanmar on foot during World War II, during the Japanese occupation of Myanmar, because my mother's side of the family was all in Myanmar. They
Oh,
were
is
all
it?
taken by the British, and they were there working for the
Oh,
British railways there. And
oh,
they all left and came through the jungles, a long, hard journey on foot, in like through the forests from northeast India to Calcutta. And then how they came back to India, and how at the time in India the British had introduced a Burmese refugee quota for schools and colleges. And my grandparents and their siblings, actually, they all got admission in that quota. Otherwise, they were to go and study in Rangoon, like engineering. But then, how they moved here, and it was basically displacement. So again, those stories stayed with me always. So yeah, sorry, very long answer for a
no, no, no,
short
but very
question.
fascinating answer, because you've, I mean, all of our life experiences inform our choices. So in that sense, I see where you're coming from. But it is quite fascinating. But for somebody who doesn't know anything about human rights law except the spelling, how will you explain to such a person what is it that you do, not just you do, as in you as a human rights lawyer or any human rights lawyer, what do you mean by human rights law anyway, and what does a human rights lawyer do?
I mean, I would classify myself more in the humanitarian affairs. Of course, human rights kind of is a part of it, because when we say
You want
women's
to
rights,
just
when
give
we,
a sort of a distinction, because it's like for people who know absolutely nothing. So if you say
of
humanitarian
course.
affairs and human rights, maybe like give it a
So
little bit of
humanitarian
context.
law is basically, since this is addressed to lawyers, I can maybe use some some geeky legal jargon. It's basically the Geneva Conventions, and it's when there is war, and what you can do in that frame. So the Geneva Conventions are part of humanitarian law, whereas human rights law are more instruments like the Convention on Child Rights, CEDAW, the Women's Convention, and all these other things. And refugee law usually forms part of humanitarian
So
law, because
will it be correct to say that humanitarian law, for someone who doesn't know, for humanitarian law is more macro in scope, in the sense that deals more with the principles, peacekeeping sort of principles that
yes,
nations have
you've
agreed to
summarized it better than me. Yes, yes,
under the
yes,
Geneva Convention, because I think 170
yes,
countries ratified the Geneva Convention.
yes,
And human rights law is like a subset of that, in the sense that it's specifying how
yeah,
those
it's more specific.
principles will be applied
Absolutely.
to children, to to women,
But
and to
human
others.
rights law is not necessarily in the context of war, it
Yeah,
applies
that's true though. Yeah,
universally.
so it's not
But
entirely
yeah,
a
so
subset. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but
So
maybe it
that's
flows
where
from
it would
that.
differ.
Yeah,
Yeah. Otherwise, yes, you're absolutely right. So that's of course they have a link for sure. Even for when we advocate for refugee rights, those are human rights that we are advocating for. The socio-economic type of rights. Of course, not political rights for refugees in the country of asylum, not that, but yes, right to education. And of course, we also for refugee children, we would like ideally when we talk about principles that uh, you know um, the same kind of rights that a country, let's say, that has signed or ratified the convention
yeah,
on on child rights will offer to refugee children as well.
yeah.
So of course, so that element is also there.
Yeah. So as a human rights lawyer, you mostly advocate for people like this. Like in your case, you advocate for the refugees, or are you part of policy making? How do you help governments? What exactly does a human rights lawyer do?
So I mean, if you're a human rights lawyer, you can do many things. You could work for an NGO, you could work for a UN agency, you could work for you could even be a private practitioner, somebody who privately practices human rights law. That is also possible. But in my case, uh, what we do is essentially, it depends from country to country. It really depends on the specific country, the operation we run there, and the operational context. So in many countries we are engaged in building the asylum system. We you know we have we provide capacity building for the governments to build their own asylum system, because of course as UNHCR we recognize that ultimately it's the host country that is has to take responsibility for, and they are ultimately responsible, so we are there to support them. So in some countries we have these capacity building programs where it's more about asylum capacity development, etc. In some countries we are running operations because there may not be a functioning government, for instance um, in locations where there's an ongoing war or
Yeah,
just
there's
immediate
some
post
strife. Yeah,
conflict. Yeah,
yeah,
or immediate post conflict, yes, or in other developing settings. Sometimes governments are not amenable to take on, or they are not ready to take on the asylum role, and we continue keeping that asylum granting role as well. So there are, broadly, there are these areas that we would work on. And when it is, uh, let's say it's a immediate post conflict setting, or a active, conflict setting, in those cases, we provide services to a much larger extent than we would do in, let's say non-conflict settings, because
So,
there, in those settings, services exist, and we only kind of support or supplement those services, and we would advocate for refugees to be included in the existing services available
hmm,
in the country for the nationals.
hmm. So when you say services, you mean like basic
Like,
necessities, or could
yeah,
be
like, for, from basic necessities to actually
education,
schools in,
yeah,
yeah, camps. Like, we run even schools in camps. Sometimes it's,
housing.
housing. I mean, of course, food distribution we don't do because we have a specialized
Yes, of
agency for
course.
that,
Yeah,
WFP.
yeah,
But non-food items, we could even, do that. Shelter,
yeah.
housing, we do all
All
of
of
that.
that.
In an emergency setting, in a conflict setting, immediate post conflict, we would engage much
Yeah,
larger in that sense. Because of course, the concept is that once there's conflict, then there's post conflict, then you're supposed to slowly transition to the development side. Then we
yeah.
start handing over to the development actors, who are there to stay longer term and continue supporting the government longer term on these things.
So that is not what the UNHCR does, in the sense that you hand it over to another agency that stays with the government and does
I
the
can
development, is it?
I can give you an example of, like, Iraq, for
Hmm.
instance. There was conflict. We did a lot. We ran camps. We provided, because of course there was an issue with not having a,
Yeah,
fully
government.
functioning
Yeah,
government, and even whatever you had, they were too engaged in. They don't have
yeah,
the resources nor the,
yeah.
ability to do it then. So we are then providing those services. So, and that's at the time not only for refugees, but also internally displaced people, people
Hmm.
who have been displaced within the borders of
Yeah.
their country. And then, as we move to post conflict, and more development agencies like UNDP,
Hmm.
etc., started moving in, ILO, they
Yeah.
work longer term with the
Yeah.
government to build their capacity on, let's say, labor, on,
Yeah.
other development projects,
Yeah.
infrastructure projects. And of course, then we
You start. Yeah.
start engagement,
Yeah.
and then we become more limited to just refugee advocacy, refugee law, and maybe service provision to refugees. Because you have to recognize that a country that's just coming out of conflict, who are struggling to provide services to their own citizens, may
Nationals.
not
Yeah.
be able to provide services also to refugees. And some of
Yeah.
these countries not only have their own displaced people, they have also refugees coming in at the same time. So it's a huge burden. So
Yeah.
it's all part of burden sharing. So we are there
Yeah.
to support and share the burden. And of course, these processes, I mean, I'm explaining it like this, but it's not something that
That's
ends
so
or
simple. Yeah, of
is
course.
done in 1 or 2 years. This is a
Yeah.
matter of
Of
15,
course.
20 years
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. So just to give context, because I'm sure a lot of the listeners will know who or what refugees are, but just to give context to what a refugee or who a refugee is basically any person of any age who has to leave his or her country of residence or birth, or the country that they recognize themselves as belonging to, because there's a conflict situation and they simply cannot live in that country for reasons of safety. Or yeah, I think
Conflict, yes, but also sometimes just persecution based on.
yes.
So even in non-conflict settings, we
Yeah.
would sometimes find refugees
Yeah.
who have left
Yes.
because of persecution based on race, religion,
Yes.
nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion.
Yeah. So it all comes down to, you don't feel safe in your own country, and therefore you, out of necessity, you're leaving. And then when you leave, you're typically leaving everything behind, and literally just with the clothes on your
Forced
back.
displacement,
Yeah.
to summarize it in,
Yeah.
it would be, yeah, forced displacement. So yeah,
Yeah.
because lots of people confuse migrants with
Yeah,
refugees. And
exactly. That's why I wanted to clarify, because you are a UN refugee agency, so you take care of refugees and not migrants who are
no,
moving for mostly for financial gain,
we
and
also
not
have
because
a UN agency that works with
that.
migrants
Oh, is
specifically.
it?
Then that's another agency. So
Yeah,
we are working with, but of course there are, it also gets very complex, because now we are seeing situations of mixed migration.
yeah, yeah. That's true.
So, it's where you have refugees mixed up with migrants.
Yeah,
You have
yeah,
that
yeah,
as well. And then, of course, we all come together to work with them.
yeah. So now you've given me a beautiful segue into the next question that I wanted to ask you, which is, you've done a fantastic job explaining what the UNHCR does, but what exactly is your role in the sense as a lawyer? How do you come in the picture and why are you even required? I mean, why is a lawyer required, let's say, in this? Because you don't know the
That's
law, right? You're not, you're India trained and you're UK British trained, but you're working in Iraq and you're working in Iran and you're probably not even working in Commonwealth countries. You're working in.
Yes, true. I have not worked in a Commonwealth
Yeah,
country other than
exactly.
when I worked with UNHCR in India.
Yeah, so that's at least your home country in the sense, but
Yeah.
so everything is different. So why a lawyer and how do you factor into this?
So, a lot of agencies actually would benefit from, I mean, not to say that non-lawyers cannot join. It's not at all like that. What I do and many of my colleagues are actually not necessarily trained lawyers, and one necessarily doesn't need to be either. You can do it without, but you need to have the basic ability to analyze and understand laws for sure. So, for sure, I mean, having a law degree does help. And there are many agencies that do this, that help, like, for instance, uh, other agencies working in other areas would help the government build sometimes laws in that respect. Um, like labor, for instance. For us, it's refugee. So if you're building an asylum system, which normally is not judicial, it's quasi judicial always, most of the time. That's how it normally works. So you need to have an understanding, because we recognize that the 1951 Convention, the 67 Protocol, that is refugee law. Those are, let's say, the international standards of how refugees
That we have
status
all agreed to.
determination, yeah,
I mean,
and how uh, yeah, the countries that have signed it or even that have not necessarily signed it, that is our let's say international norm and standard for governing any asylum law. Of course, I mean, not every country, even countries that have signed it, don't necessarily, they do make adjustments, and you can, to suit your context, your system and your peculiarities, for sure. So that understanding, I mean, that's what initially UNHCR was established for. That was the very core mandate of UNHCR. That's what UNHCR was first established for. So that's the reason you'll see a lot of lawyers in UNHCR, because normally you start with the asylum capacity development, or doing something like refugee status determination, where you are in within UNHCR having status determination procedure according to the 1951 convention
so there is a
within UNHCR.
categorization, is it?
Yes, on
Okay.
behalf of the, let's say, government, where the government has
Okay.
not assumed asylum
Okay. Okay.
status determination
Okay.
responsibilities. So that's the very core function of UNHCR. That's why you end up seeing a lot of. But then, of course, once you do this, then there are other things like programming for refugees, running education programs and things like that. And usually, all of that broadly would fall under refugee protection. So that's why you'll see a lot of protection officers, which I am with UNHCR, being lawyers as well by training. But not to say that non-lawyers cannot. It's something you will find a lot of non-lawyers as well doing it, who can understand basically international uh, legal principles and standards for refugee law. Then they can definitely
Then,
do it. There's no
yeah.
problem.
But I see how, maybe because I'm also a lawyer by training and by practice, I see how our training, practice, education, and generally the way we are taught to think can uniquely sort of be advantageous to this kind of position that you are holding, or you or your counterparts in any of the other agencies will hold.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah, it is helpful, I have to say, because when colleagues who are, I mean, of course, we work with a lot of, let's say, national colleagues who, like, as an international staff member, I would
yeah,
work with a lot of national colleagues
yeah,
who are by training lawyers in their own country,
Yeah.
and then when they explain something to you, it's kind of,
Easier to
you can
understand. Yeah.
relate, you can kind of understand
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And you know where to
But
go.
law is something that people do also later in their lives.
Yeah.
It's not like you can't read and learn,
Yeah, that's true.
unlike engineering or medicine, for
Yeah. Yeah.
instance,
Yeah.
where you
It's
have to
more
have some
common
kind of
sense.
degree.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Than
it's
being
like how
technical.
so many people, they study something else, and then in
Yeah,
their
that's
when they
true.
are 35, 40, they realize,
That's true.
oh, I think I want to do, and then they study for 3 years, or like evening college, they study law, and then they graduate, and some of them even practice afterwards.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's why I'm saying, like, it's not that, that rigid. It will
You
help for
can.
sure, but if, let's say, you have the ability to read, learn, and understand, you can still do it.
Yeah. Now tell me, because we're speaking about the law and the skills that the legal training gives for a role like this. If you are speaking to an Indian law student or a young lawyer or even anyone, let's say, who is interested in this field, what you what does the Indian law degree give you, first of all, and is it required to do for having an international job like this? Is it required to do a master's from a foreign university, like you did it from Britain, but any other country? You think, is it required? Does it help, or with the basic Indian law degree you can uh, get this job, let's say?
I think there's no requirement for a master's. Neither is, a basic law degree from the home country can also be useful. There's no problem at all. And then what you learn is through experience after that. So that's absolutely fine. And even if you don't have a basic law degree, that is also fine. You can still, you could maybe
Yeah,
get an internship, learn a bit, and then
yeah,
work for an NGO, work in a similar, an NGO that probably works
yeah,
with vulnerable communities, and then also, apply for jobs in UNHCR, or within the UN system. So that's also, so there's no necessarily no requirement as such, but I think it can be an asset for sure.
yeah.
If you have that, it's an asset, but it's not, I wouldn't qualify it as a
But does it
requirement.
make you more marketable in the sense that, because there must competition to get into this must be fierce, right? Because you are competing
Yes,
not
for
with
sure.
your,
That's why I said it's an asset. It will
yeah,
make you more
more
profitable
marketable.
for
Yeah,
sure. But I think the better thing to do would be to maybe finish your studies, like your bachelor's, not necessarily do your master's straight away. Gain experience through internships, work experience, even work, and similar work, let's say in
yeah,
related, relevant work experience,
yeah,
and then do your masters, I think. And that's, I think, something I didn't do, but looking back, if I could
yeah,
do it again, this is how I would do it. It's much better to do your masters
yeah,
with a
yeah.
bit
I
of work
agree.
experience.
I agree, because I think you are also able to um, enjoy the course a lot more and sort of take a lot more out of the course because you have a
Yes.
better perspective.
Also, you meet people, and you're not so clueless when you meet them,
Yeah,
because I met them, I was very
that's
young, never worked. I mean, of course, I'd done internships, but I never really, worked. So they brought a lot of experiences from their working life during classes,
yeah,
a lot of practical
yeah,
experiences that I didn't have.
yeah.
So I think that's always helpful
Yeah, I
to
agree.
have that.
When I was when I was in Colombia, even though most of us did go after we had worked for a couple of years, but working for a couple of years, when you're in a batch of people, some of whom have been judges. Okay, they've been judges in a sort of quasi judicial capacity, but they still have been adjudicators. So the kind of perspective they are bringing to dispute resolution seminars or classes is something that it takes you a lot of time to get to that level to understand also, because they are bringing a perspective of having adjudicated disputes for almost 3 years. So I
Mhm.
totally see what you mean. So now if you have to advise a law student
Mhm.
who is interested like you, who's very clear about the fact that he or she wants to get into do human rights law, how would you what would you tell him or her from starting from law school? What should they do? How should they sort of craft not just their a student life, but then their internships, career, like what will you tell them?
um how should they craft? Well, I would say that, I mean, if they're so clear that they know that they want to do this, then definitely do a lot of internships locally and also try to do them internationally. That would be very good. And now,
Internationally would be
international,
only with the
like,
UN or
no, not
other
necessarily. Maybe an NGO,
outside
an
your country,
international NGO
like
that gives
Amnesty or
good
something?
experience. Yeah, perhaps. Or even there are many others, many international NGOs that they could get internships with. Also, or within the UN system or the ICC, many of these organizations offer internships and good internships. So that gives a lot of exposure. And then if you had any doubt in your mind whether you're cut out for it or not, also will be, you know, clear in your head whether you want to do it going forward or not. So I would really say, yeah, load up on those internships because they're very useful. They teach you a lot. And I think, yeah, that's where I also missed out because I I was just able to do internships, with NGOs, etc., locally, which is not bad. It did teach, but I think when you do a bit internationally, you have more exposure. So that's good.
And would you recommend that they do moods, they write articles, they uh I don't know, they what what else can they do? um
Articles and moods, I would qualify them as extracurricular. If
yeah,
you're interested, for sure. But
yeah.
I don't think that that has any bearing on your ability to perform or get your internship. And maybe, okay, maybe it might help in getting an internship or two at that stage.
Hmm.
But in your future career, it will have not really any. It moods will help, of course, with self confidence. So that's
Yeah,
why I'm saying it's more personality development
yeah,
and
true.
extracurricular rather than it necessarily having a bearing on you getting a job afterwards.
That's true. And for somebody who is already in practice but wants to pivot and get into human rights law, how would what would you tell such a person? Where should they start? What should they do? Whom should they reach out to if they have to?
Mm, who wants to pivot? Um, I would assume that they have maybe had an experience with I don't know, with an internship or something like, or that has
Yeah,
made
or
them
like
change their mind.
yeah, or like they, a lot of councils, they also work with NGOs giving their time for
Yes,
free
yes,
because they want to
true,
make an impact.
true. Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
then, because the idea is, Priya, and I'm sure, I mean, you obviously know this more than me, but the idea is that, or the thought is that, this field of law doesn't pay. And
I
it's,
know. Yes,
yeah,
I know that's the thought.
yeah.
People
But
always
is
think
that
that. I
true or
used to
is
too.
that not?
Well, it really depends. But I would not say if you're in it for making the money, then I would say don't do it. That would be my advice.
Yeah,
Because I have never thought that one should do what they do with the sole aim of making money. Even beyond human rights or beyond humanitarian law or, working in the field that I'm working, even outside of that. I think if you make that your goal, um, then you're not really doing what you enjoy necessarily. Pick what you really enjoy doing, and if you pick what you really, really enjoy doing, the money will come. You will do so well that you will
that's,
do the best
yeah,
uh, in your field or in
yeah,
your to your ability, and automatically whatever
that's
money
true.
has to come will come.
Yeah,
So I don't believe in this concept of going after just the
yeah,
money. This is not what I have thought of from the
yeah,
beginning. And I know a lot of people discouraged me also at the time. Oh, it doesn't pay, you won't do
yeah.
anything. But it's if people who have done well in it and who have really enjoyed it have done well, they are okay money wise. I mean, sure, maybe they're not like
Like
millionaires
the,
and
yeah, like the
billionaires.
commercial lawyers, yeah. But it's
But
definitely
no,
not the
it's not. That's also not true that they're not like as
as wealthy as
uh,
the commercial lawyers, is it?
some of them are. It's
Yeah,
just a matter of what I mean is maybe they are not. Ambani or Bill
Yeah, of
Gates,
course. Yeah,
but they
yeah.
make decent money and they
Decent
enjoy
money.
doing what they're
Yeah.
doing.
And
So, I mean,
so
money enough
essentially,
to live your life comfortably, to
yeah,
travel, etc., they have.
yeah.
So,
So essentially, it's not like what we think in the sense that it's chiller, you don't get anything. It's not that.
no, it's definitely not.
But then like
If you
any
do well,
other
you
field of
will.
law, yeah, like any
Yeah.
other field of law, the sky is the limit because your success really depends on your
I
effort.
don't know if sky is the limit. I
Huh,
don't know if I
okay,
would
fair.
put it like that, because
Yeah.
it is the not-for-profit sector,
Yes, yes.
and you are, I mean, normally, at least in international organizations, it's it's a bureaucracy. So you
Yeah,
have very fixed,
yeah,
like in a government job,
yeah,
you are a certain grade, you get a fixed amount. There's no question of asking for a raise and these type of
yeah.
things. You get promoted, you get a raise along with your promotion. And if you're
Hmm.
doing well, you will get the promotion. If you are worthy, you will get it. So that's how. So I wouldn't put, say, sky is the limit. But then this um for me, I don't understand this concept at all of sky being the limit, because there's always somebody who's doing better than you.
Yeah,
So even when you talk to lawyers who are practicing, you also have those lawyers who sit and do notary,
yeah,
who are probably,
yeah, true.
not making as much money.
Yeah,
Then you also have some people who are practicing very well. It goes very well for a few years, and after that, they're not making
yeah,
money necessarily. So you can always look to
yeah. Up
someone
and down. That's
who
true.
has more money. So
Yeah,
money is not my criteria of judging anything. I think if you really enjoy doing something, you will automatically do it well, and you will automatically excel in it. When you excel, whatever needs to come in the form of money will come.
yeah. That's good advice for everyone. Uh, but I just wanted to speak about the money part because the general
No, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah, the
idea
general
is that
perception. But it's not
right.
that, you will be living like a pauper
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. I
That
think
much
that's
I
more
can tell you.
important to
Like,
clear
it's not
up.
like that.
Yeah,
It's not like that. Like,
yeah,
I'm living very comfortably,
yeah,
and I have, enough to meet my needs and to even enjoy my life. There's no
yeah,
problem with that. You can
yeah,
surely do that.
yeah,
But yeah, but it's not, yeah, it's not about the,
yeah. And I
like,
suppose if
I
you
started at the very bottom, so I
huh,
can tell you that,
yeah,
it was for sure not about, and at the time, my peers were in law firms making, 3-4 times the amount
yeah,
I was
yeah,
making. But that never bothered me, because I
yeah,
knew I was doing what I liked and I
yeah,
loved, and I would do well at it. And it
yeah,
happened. Like,
yeah.
I did end up
Absolutely,
doing.
yeah, yeah. So Priya, just to close out this one section before we go to the this fun for me section. Uh, you have not just studied in a couple of jurisdictions, but you also have exposure to multiple jurisdictions because of your job. What do you see from a comparative perspective? What do you see as being the problems in our Indian legal system? I'm sure you can point out to a lot, but also what do you see as being the strengths of our legal system, and things that you think we can do, each one of us, you, me, us in this position, to generally improve the system?
So, flaws. I think we are, one thing that has stood out to me as a flaw is that I think we're not precise and we're not concise, including in the
Very
court
true. Yeah.
submissions and
Yeah.
everything. I
I
think
don't know.
I don't know where we get this from, because
So
even these
it's
common law
apparently,
countries
yeah, they
that
don't
we
do
have
it.
gotten our system
Yeah.
from, they don't do it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they did it in the
Yeah.
past. I don't know how it
I
was,
don't. Yeah.
obviously in the 40s and
Yeah.
30s and 20s,
And they've left
but
it long ago, and
long
we are
ago. So
continuing
we
with
really
that
need to
relic.
change that.
Yeah,
It's very a
absolutely.
convoluted form of writing and working, when something can be said in one line.
Yeah, just use active
I don't
voice, use
understand the
full
need to
stops.
repeat or to,
Absolutely. Reiterate, confirm, declare.
I
Yeah.
really don't get it. I mean, if you want to reiterate and confirm, you can always do it, in court, in addition to your. But I don't think that's at all necessary. And unfortunately, this is how we are also trained in college to write. And your marks really depend on how much you write, which um, I find a bit ridiculous, because you need to know the crux, not, you know, it makes us very
Completely
long-winded.
agree. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no, I mean, and I notice that a lot in people who are Indian lawyers, studied in India. I mean, lawyers generally all over the world are slightly long-winded, but
Yeah.
in their, way of
Yeah.
manner of speaking, it's by training what to do.
Yeah.
But in India particularly, they are extremely,
Yeah. And we
which is
use
not.
passive voice because
Yeah,
that's how we've been trained to write in passive voice. We use commas instead of full stops. We start our paragraphs with and it takes
which
training to
is not
break that.
really, I mean, it's not
Absolutely.
appreciated
I
generally
know, I
outside
know.
maybe that,
No,
I
it's
don't know,
not.
litigation
Yeah.
or whatever
We had a
sector.
Queen's Counsel in when I was as a legal counsel. We used to do our own drafting. So my boss had taken this document in the Queen's Counsel in England, just threw it back at him and said, "What is this?" And then redrafted the whole thing. And honestly, that was the genesis of my unlearning. Of all of this, and then so I really credit that person for doing that, but it takes a lot of unlearning. It took a lot of time to
Yeah, yeah, of
unlearn the
course.
way
Like,
that
for me as well, like my first job with UNHCR, I was, doing refugee status determination. So you write, it's a quasi legal document that you produce. You do an analysis, a legal analysis of why the person is a refugee, under what grounds, etc. I had the same problem, and then eventually I got over it. But it took some time.
so those are your flaws. What do you think are our unless you want to continue on the flaws?
No, I think that's
And
that's what stands out to me as a flaw.
what do you think are the advantages of
The advantages, I don't know if it's only the Indian legal system, but I will say it's common law in general. The
hmm, hmm,
the system of precedence. I think that is very, very, because I
yeah,
have not really worked in, my international experience is mostly in countries that follow civil
civil
law,
law.
and I feel that having a court with, and where precedents have value, is definitely, and giving judges that kind of
Authority.
authority is very valuable, I think. So I think that is very, very useful, and I find that's a strength.
Hmm,
It's obviously not only specific to India, but I think it's a
yeah,
strength. I think globally, if we look, countries following this
common
system are
law.
in minority.
Yeah,
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 right?
yeah. But I
Some
never knew
places.
that, huh? I only knew that when I went to do my master's. Otherwise, I was living under a rock, clearly. I mean, but I did not know that. So
Yeah, no. So I think that's very
yeah,
useful. I find like
yeah,
that's a good thing.
yeah. Now we go on to the fun segment for me because it helps me know you better. So we call this segment 5 4 3 2 1. So I ask you five of something, four of something, three of something, like that. So five productivity tips or apps. You can say I can give me apps, whatever that you swear by or that has helped you.
Apps, no, I don't really use
Huh.
apps,
So it's okay. Apps
but
was just
I'm
yeah.
old school.
I know,
I
you know,
don't,
I thought I'm being very cool by adding apps, but not a single, every single person is like, listen, yeah, I don't use these apps at all.
yeah,
Neither do I.
I actually don't. I mean, I
Yeah.
did use a fitness app for a while, but that's because I had a,
Yeah.
trainer, and she
Yeah.
was forcing me to use it. Even then, I used to forget to update it,
Yeah.
even though I used to follow. But for me, I can give productivity tips generally that I
Yeah.
follow,
Yeah. Of
but
course. Yeah.
app
Yeah.
linked,
Yeah, that's
let's
fine. Hmm.
um, to-do lists. I think they're very helpful before going to sleep or the first thing in the morning. I'm not talking just work related, but also like for personal stuff. You need to do taxes, you need to do pay bills or whatever. I think that's very helpful. It helps you prioritize, and it helps you stay more focused on what you want to do, and plan your day better. Um, Eating healthy, and this I've learned the hard way, because I have, when you work very crazy hours, sometimes you don't pay attention to this, and it really does take a toll, and it's not good because it takes down your productivity in the longer run. So eating healthy is very important, I think. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be something very quick, and I really don't have time, but I still make an effort to make my lunch and take it with me most days. Of course, there are days I don't do it, but most days. And not compromising on sleep. And I've seen this particularly among my lawyer friends who are either, working for law firms, or uh, they still continue like they were in their 20s. So I think I don't know how they are. I mean, it is going to take a toll on the body, and I think it is important not to compromise on sleep, and to sleep at a reasonable hour is very, very important. um, and of course, staying active, I would say, is another thing. Nothing, even if you're climbing stairs, I think that's good enough. Again, I'm giving these health related things because I have, completely fallen off the wagon on all these things, and it had at one point taken a toll. um, and then once you fall, once it takes a toll, you have to take time off, you have to reset, and you don't get to work also. Let's say you really love working and you don't want to take that leave, you will have to take it. So might as well pay attention to these things from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think I just posted something this morning on my Instagram because I'm realizing it now. When you said, we still work crazy hours. No, I don't really work crazy hours as much as I waste time to up to crazy hours. Uh, but I just said this morning I wake up early, but I was so lethargic, and I said that's because I didn't sleep properly and I didn't eat properly last night. Just rubbish. So I completely understand what you mean by saying that. I'm saying all of this and how it directly impacts our productivity the next day.
Hmm.
So yeah, I agree with you on that. Now, the 4 books that you would recommend, and this is my favorite question.
I actually don't have 4 books to recommend, but I have two.
Only 2? Okay, it's okay.
Yeah, I only have two because I read a lot of non-fiction history
Yeah,
books,
that's
and
fine. No, you can give non-fiction and history also. What's wrong with that?
okay, I can then give you that as well.
Yeah, it
But
doesn't have to
the,
be like law related. Huh?
yeah, no, I would never read a law
Yeah.
related. I'm very sorry, but I wouldn't. My extracurricular and favorite pastime is history. I really enjoy that. I enjoy reading about it. So that's what I would.
Fine.
Uh, I would say I think almost all the books from William Dalrymple I like. I really like because it's so also
Yeah,
well researched and
yeah.
fact based, and I really like that.
Yeah, and it
So
seems like it's happening in front of you, right? Like he has a very lyrical, descriptive way of writing that brings things to life.
and it kind of stays with
Yeah,
me always.
yeah,
So I
absolutely.
really like his
And he
books.
has these
And
obscure stories that come, and
yes,
these characters
and,
who
and it's
have
all well
never made it.
researched. It's
Yeah,
actually, he
exactly.
has
Yeah,
evidence for those,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he
yeah,
puts them in.
yeah,
So it's very,
yeah.
very interesting. So I like that. And then because I have been in managerial positions for a while, another book that I really like is um, Managing Your Manager. I mean, while I have been in managerial positions, so of course this is not linked to the people I supervise, it's linked to, so this could actually go for anyone, but that's a
Who
book
is
I
the
like.
author of Managing Your Manager?
So I'll have to check
Yeah,
again
that's fine. Yeah.
because I not paid attention to the author. It was recommended to me by one of my managers. Uh, no, my manager's manager, who was have and when I told her that I was having a tough time at one point in my life with my
Okay.
manager, and I think it has some very useful tips. I
Oh,
can
is
look
it?
up
Yeah.
the
No,
author. It's I think an American author, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken. I'm
that's
not
okay.
sure.
We'll ask Google. These simple questions we can ask
Yeah,
Google.
yeah. We
Yeah.
can check on Google. The other one I really like is The Art of uh, Not Giving a Fuck. Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that word, but I've
Or the
said it. You can
second
beep it.
or the third person to recommend that book.
Okay, you can
Yeah,
beat that one.
yeah. No, it's okay. I mean,
Yeah. So yeah, so that is it's for me. I was why I'm recommending it is because I have control issues. At least I had them. I wanted to control everything around me, and you know, and I just did not know when to let go. And I think this has really helped me through that, especially when I was new to managerial positions and roles. It was even harder because it's somebody else doing the job. You want to control it, and you can't do it like that. So I have that book really helped me, and also the kind of field that I'm in, the work we do. It's very much around you that, oh, you have to help, you have to support, you have to save, and really people get too much into that, and then they also lose their sanity along the way, because you're trying to, we are also bound by the amount of funds we have. We cannot do everything, right? So I think it's good, because when you enter the stream, you're very idealistic. You think that you will change the world, but doesn't come like that. So
that's true.
yeah.
It gives you perspective, basically.
Yes, for
And I
sure.
agree. Of course, for me, it gave me perspective on something else, more for, from my personal life, in my personal
Mhm.
life, not so much in my professional life, but certainly in my personal life. So,
Mhm.
so you said three. You want to say one more?
No, I think that's it,
For three, okay.
because this is all I would read, to be
This is
honest.
all, that's fine. What about three tips that you would give law students?
Hmm. uh, I think always know what you want to do and what you enjoy. um, don't shy away from trying out everything. If you're not sure what you want to do, go ahead and try out multiple things while you are still a student. Do multiple internships in different fields. Don't always go to the same, two top law firms who do the exact same thing, and then you have those two brands on your. I would say just try out, and then that'll also help you make up your mind, because the second tip leads to the first. You will know what you really really enjoy. And yeah, and don't shy away from learning new skills. You will always learn. Like when I was in school, college, I used to think, okay, that's it, now I'm working, I don't know. But actually majority of my learning has happened when I started working, and I'm still learning. Our organization keeps introducing new databases and new platforms, and we have to, even you're close to 40, 50, you still have to learn those things. So never shy away from doing that, because that's very important, and that keeps you also motivated.
That, and it keeps you more relevant with
Yes,
everything.
for
You can
sure.
have
For sure.
conversations with people, you can understand people's perspectives, just because you're constantly learning. So I agree with that. Two life lessons that you've learned in your life till date, which you
Mhm.
want to share with everyone.
uh, Learn to let go, and don't forget to care for yourself. It's very very important. I mean, you should care for yourself the most, and then somebody else.
Oh my God, that is, you spoke to my heart. But this is something, I don't know about you, but this is something that I feel I am still learning. um, and it's happening much later, in like it's happening in the last 1 or 2 years. This is after I have two kids, blah blah blah. After all of that, this is happening. So I hope people sort of adopt it. I
Yeah,
wish
it
I
also
had
it's a
adopted it
part
earlier.
of growing up in maturity. It comes with age also a
Yeah,
little bit, but I think this is
yeah, we
the
should.
reason I'm also saying I'm emphasizing self-care. Is I know the audience of this is primarily Indian,
Yeah,
and particularly for women.
yeah,
We are not brought up,
that's true.
most of us, majority of us, let's say, are not brought up like this, that you
Yeah,
I was lucky to have a mother who actually cared first for herself and then others. But you don't normally
yeah, you
see that.
don't. Yeah,
It's always about caring for someone else first, and then
yes,
no. But if you have not cared for yourself, you can't care for anybody
yeah,
else.
that's true.
It's important.
Yeah. That's true. I completely agree. And the best advice that you have ever received? One piece of
The
advice.
best advice. I mean, there are two, I would say, that I really
Yeah, it's okay.
I always, and
Yeah,
two that I would give to, colleagues as well now, younger
yeah,
colleagues. One, to the like the, younger people who are just starting out, I would say keep a growth mindset. Don't uh, compare all the time with, don't look at what others are doing. Focus on what you are doing while keeping a growth mindset. I think that's very important because a lot of, at least from what I see, and the colleagues I work with, the very young colleagues that who are just starting out, they tend to get so distracted by who's doing what,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
their focus is not on what they are doing. It's fine as long as you keep your focus on what you are doing. Let's say somebody else has gotten a bit ahead of you also, you will get there because you're
Yeah,
so focused on what you're
yeah,
doing. So compete with yourself,
yeah, yeah. And
not with
or you won't get there, and that's okay also.
that's also okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine. I
yeah.
mean,
I think
maybe
it's
you'll
because
get
of,
somewhere else which
yeah, yeah,
is
exactly.
equivalent to,
Comparable to,
yeah,
yeah,
comparable, because it's, you can't measure it like this, it's not
absolutely.
equal.
Yeah,
It's always going to be like,
yeah,
if you don't get something, something else and better even sometimes comes
yeah,
along.
yeah,
So I think people need to, like,
yeah. Understand
it
that.
takes effort,
Yeah,
obviously. Like, I have also been very competitive looking at others. This has happened, and this still sometimes happens, you feel, but people tend to get so demotivated by it. No, that's why I'm saying also keep that growth mindset at the same time,
yeah,
because that shouldn't affect you. You shouldn't get demotivated. You
yeah,
should look back where you were and how far you've come.
yeah, yeah. You should be
And
on
one,
that. Sorry.
yeah, no, no. And another, although it's, you said one, but I will still say this, because I tend to observe, and I tend to also hear from my from other lawyers, let's say, that, the higher up you go, you will be in a managerial position if you're interested and if you are going that route at some point or the other, whether in a law firm, in a company, wherever. Uh, Lawyers have a reputation of being very bad managers,
Hmm.
and for a reason, because we tend to micromanage and,
Yeah,
these type of things.
yeah,
So I think people should remember that a coach who, a micromanager is someone who is a coach who's trying to get into the game and play the game rather than
yeah.
coach
That's
people.
true.
So I think that is important to remember,
Yeah,
because yeah, I think this is lawyers do have a reputation of not being such great managers, which
yeah,
is not a thing. I think people should, and it's not healthy,
yeah,
if you're,
yeah,
it's important. If you've come now to a managerial role, then look at things from that angle.
yeah,
Don't try to do the job,
yeah,
that you are supposed to manage
yeah,
or lead,
yeah,
or a, even a better word, lead.
yeah. But this is very, very good advice. And I know that this, of course, there are problems with lawyers because I think we are so used to, our effort in a large sense informs our success. So because of that, I think we have that mindset that, oh my god, I have to work, I have to, you take that sort of responsibility. So I suppose that's where it's coming from, or
But
that
also
could be.
your effort is, also leading someone. Also a lot of effort goes in it,
Yeah,
managing and
exactly.
leading. So
Exactly.
that's your effort,
Yeah,
and then when your team shines and does
yeah,
well,
exactly. And so,
that's your success.
yeah, so this kind of change in your mindset is very, very, very
Yeah.
necessary, even if you don't
And
have.
that's okay if some people like just don't like that kind of a role, and then that's fine. You should
Yeah,
know
you don't
it.
take it.
You should
Yeah,
know that you don't like it, and then don't take it up,
yeah, don't take it.
but if you're getting there, then you have to change your
Yeah, yeah,
mindset and you have to
absolutely.
work on it.
Yeah, that's true. You have to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like a leader, or like a worker or leader, or whatever, whatever words you want to use.
Yeah,
But
like lead. Don't
yeah,
necessarily try to, start perfecting the
yeah,
job,
yeah,
and
I
then,
know.
because sometimes I see all they do is they'll look at drafts and things and just,
Red marks.
nitpick,
Yeah.
and nobody else can write exactly the way you
Yeah.
write. That's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Yeah. But even I'm guilty of doing this, huh? And now, like the first thing when you told me, that incident came to my mind where I have returned a draft with red marks all over the
No, but
draft.
we've all done that. We've
Yeah,
all done
that's
that.
true.
I mean, I have done it too. I've also, like, I've trained myself not to be
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
So I think that the point is that you can train yourself to be anything
yeah,
in your professional life,
that's true.
but it requires training. You
Yeah,
have to control aspects of your personality sometimes
yeah,
to be able to train yourself to do that.
yeah,
It's not always like going to come naturally to everybody, for sure.
yeah,
And these are skills that can be built.
that's true.
I'm a completely different person at home from what I am at work,
Yeah,
because I've trained myself to be a certain way and
yeah,
behave a certain way at work. But I'm not necessarily, all my flaws come out when I'm at home.
yeah. That's true, no? Because home is more our safe space, and
Exactly. But I hide them well at work because I
yeah,
know some flaws can be damaging to the team
that's
and I
true.
don't want that.
That's true. Yeah. That's really good advice, actually. And um, I'm going to close. I know that I asked you to come here for an hour, and we've like gone
No,
way
that's okay.
over.
I think I spoke too much, maybe. That's
No,
why.
no, not at all. We had this great conversation. I'm not going to edit anything of this. I don't think anything needs to be edited. The whole thing is going to go up, and whoever wants to listen will get a very valuable podcast, I think. Thank you so much, Priya, for giving me your time. You've been so generous with your time and so kind also. I know you're between travel schedules, you're having this very busy time, but you still took out time for me, so I'm really grateful.
No, no, not at all. Thank you so much, and sorry that it, took so long,
Oh no, of
and
course
this
not.
hiccups of the timing and all of this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But yeah, all's well that ends well. So
yes,
have a lovely day ahead, day, night, whatever, day ahead.
evening,
And
yeah.
thank you so much, and see you